All right, welcome to week two, the little family devotional time. Again, replacing the classroom time that we are missing out on with not being able to meet in person. So, again, we're going to discuss some time of waiting from the Bible. So, this week we discussed Daniel, and we especially focused on him in the lion's den. But I thought I'd give a little bit of information for the background of who is this Daniel and what brought him to be in the lion's den. So, at the beginning of the book of Daniel, Daniel, along with some other kind of up and comers in the kingdom of Judah, are taken into exile into Babylon. So, this is before the kingdom actually falls, but these people, these children of Israel, even though there was two different kingdoms at the time, these people are taken out of their homeland and they are brought to a strange land. Now, Daniel and then he's got three friends whose Babylonian names are Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, which you may have heard of those, and we'll talk about here in a moment or two. Those people are kind of put in charge as leaders. Now, Daniel kind of ebbs and flows with the times because different leaders come to power. And by the time we get to Daniel in the lion's den, Daniel's no longer a young man, he's older. So at chapter 6, we have these people who kind of want to get, well, they're jealous of Daniel and they want to get him in trouble. So they go up to the king and they're like, hey, king, you should totally make this rule that says you can't pray to any gods except, you and the gods that we like. And the king's like, yeah, that sounds pretty neat. I like some me, so let's make that a rule. But that rule doesn't work for Daniel. And we'll get to that in a moment here. But before we do, when is a time in your life that you have been afraid? And we'll pause here so you can talk about it. So for me, I can think of a bunch of different times when I was afraid. Starting in a new school, that's a scary thing. Running out of gas on the 35W bridge, that's a scary thing when the silly vehicle for work runs out of gas because the gas gauge is broken. When I was a kid, I was afraid of wolves coming into the car as we were driving. So I wouldn't roll the windows down at night. That's not really a good fear per se. There's no wolves in western Minnesota. But sometimes our fears cause us to act in different ways. Now, Daniel could have been afraid of this rule because he's going to be praying to his God. He's going to be worshiping his God. So in 6:10, we get this. When Daniel knew that the document had been signed, so he knows that this is now a rule that you can't do this, he went to his house where he had windows in his upper chamber open toward Jerusalem. He got down on his knees 3 times a day and prayed and gave thanks before his God, as he had done previously. So then those people that made the rules, they catch Daniel doing this, and they go to the king and they're like, hey, king, remember that rule that you made, that really awesome rule? And the king's like, oh yeah, that was a sweet rule. I do remember that rule. And then they're like, oh, bummer, Daniel, the guy that you like, he's breaking that rule. So the king's like, oh, well, Daniel, we can't force that rule on Daniel. And they're like, oh, sorry, king, you can't change your rules. So the king doesn't necessarily want to put Daniel in the lion's den, but he needs to make sure that those rules are followed. Kind of like how we talked about in the first week with those 10 commandments, that rules need to be followed. The king, especially if he wanted people to listen to his future rules, he needs to make sure that this rule is followed. So then we pick up the story at Daniel 6, verse 16. Then the king commanded, and Daniel was brought and cast into the den of lions. The king declared to Daniel, may your God, whom you serve continually, deliver you. And a stone was brought and laid on the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet, so that's like a ring kind of thing, and with the signet of his lords, and nothing might be changed concerning Daniel. And then the king went to his place and spent the night fasting. No diversions were brought to him, and sleep fled from him. And at break of day, the king arose and went in haste to the den of lions. As he came near to the den where Daniel was, he cried out in a tone of anguish. The king declared to Daniel, "O Daniel, servant of the living God, has your God, whom you serve, continually been able to deliver you from the lions?" Then Daniel said to the king, "O king, live forever. My God sent his angel and shut the lions' mouths, and they have not harmed me, because I was found blameless before him, and also before you, O king, I have done no harm." Then the king was exceedingly glad, and commanded that Daniel be taken up out of the den. So Daniel was taken up out of the den, and no kind of harm was found on him, because he had trusted in his God. And the king commanded, and those men who had maliciously accused Daniel were brought and cast into the den of lions, they and their children and wives. And before they reached the bottom of the den, the lions overpowered them and broke all their bones in pieces. And then King Darius wrote to all the peoples, nations, and languages that dwell in all the earth, "Peace be multiplied to you. I make a decree that in all my dominion people are to tremble and fear before the God of Daniel, for he is the living God, enduring forever. His kingdom shall never be destroyed, and his dominion shall be to the end. He delivers and rescues. He works signs and wonders in heaven and on earth. He who has saved Daniel from the power of the lions." So, does God take away the lions? No, he doesn't take away the lions. It says he shuts their mouths. But he still delivers Daniel. Now we're going to go back to that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So they're the people that were in the fiery furnace, and then an angel appears. But before they get thrown in the fiery furnace, they say to the king at that time, "If this be so, our God, whom we serve, is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But if not, be it known to you, O king, that we will not serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego basically say, we know that God can save us, but even if he doesn't, we ain't going to worship you. Now, have you ever been in a time where it's been tough to be a Christian or to worship God? We'll pause there while you talk about it. Now, sometimes when I'm at my other jobs, it's tough for me to talk about being a Christian because, I don't know how people are going to react to that. But the cool thing about the book of Daniel, and I think the thing that we can really learn from the book of Daniel, is that even though he's waiting, because they know that this exile is going to end and they're going to be able to go back home, and he's in this land that isn't very nice to anyone in the area, but especially to God's people, the kingdoms of Judah and Israel itself, the Israelite people. Daniel still serves his God, but he also still serves those people around him. So when Jesus talks about that greatest commandment, it talks about loving God, loving others, and that's basically what Daniel does to get through those tough times of being in this strange land. He continues to trust and serve his God, and he also continues to help these people around him that are honestly his enemies. Now, what does that say for us? So maybe think, and we won't pause right now, but after we end here in prayer, think about those people that you can still show love to that are around you, that maybe they don't show love to you. Let's close with prayer. Dear God, help us to be like Daniel,
like Daniel,
loving you
loving you,
and serving others.
and serving others.
Amen.